Hi, this is Lori from GLP-1 Journey in Review. Today I'm doing a video in my interview series where we talk to people about their weight loss programs. I want to remind everybody that I am not a healthcare provider. My guest is a healthcare provider, but she is not your healthcare provider. Today we have with us Dr. Meghan, who is gracious enough to do this interview. I want to remind everybody again, since I'm not a healthcare provider and Dr. Meghan is not yours, if you're planning on starting a weight loss journey, I strongly advise that you seek help with your healthcare provider. All that being said, Dr. Meghan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Dr. Meghan. I have a YouTube channel, Weight Medicine with Dr. Meghan, where I talk about all things weight related, weight medication related, all the things. I discuss everything about that. And I also am a practicing obesity medicine physician and a weight loss coach. So I see people in Massachusetts for weight medication and weight coaching. And then I also see people around the world for weight loss coaching as well. So I'm delighted to help people in any way that I can. And thanks again for having me on.
And all of Dr. Megan's information is going to be linked down below in the description. If you find any of this useful, please smash that like button and subscribe. Then hop on over to Dr. Megan's channel and do the same. Let's start off with the basics. What is obesity?
What is obesity? Obesity is technically having a BMI that is 30 or above. And there's
Great,
three
pretty
different
simple.
classes. There's class 1, class 2, and class 3.
Now, this is primarily a GLP-1 channel, so it's going to be a little bit more geared to that. But uh, when people start a GLP-1 journey, what is their biggest mistake that they usually make?
Gosh, that is a great question. I would say the biggest mistake they make before they see me is thinking that it's just something that they can go on for a short period of time. And then I think a lot of people have this idea, well, yeah, well, after I'm on it though, like after everything is like the weight has gone down and after I get these good habits in place, I can just go off it, right? And that is not how they work, unfortunately. So I would say that's the biggest mistake before people come to see me. I think after they come to see me, probably the biggest mistake is thinking the medication is going to do everything for them, because unfortunately it doesn't do that either.
So people are tend to be on this basically for a lifetime.
It's a forever medication. We're for right now at the time of this filming. If you're thinking about taking it, you should plan to stay on it lifelong.
Okay. Now, I originally, when I started my journey, I went to my primary doctor. The first one basically said, "No, I don't believe in them. Just eat less, work harder." I've since gone to another one who quite honestly said, "I think it's probably a great idea. I just don't know too much about them. Maybe you could see somebody, through telehealth or something, and I can manage everything else, and we'll just, meet a couple times a year and discuss it." Since most people are getting their medications from PCPs, do you find that they're educated enough on these, or do you think that they should be more educated on the GLP-1 medications?
I think, and also having been a primary care doctor for years, I think it's both like absolutely necessary for primary care doctors to be up to speed on this because weight really is the root cause of so many medical issues. Um, but also from the primary care doctor standpoint, like it's a lot to like
Mhm.
keep track of. So I definitely understand why there are some doctors who are, every time you prescribe this medication as a physician to try to get it approved by insurance, it's not like a medication, like a statin medication that you can just send to your pharmacy, your patient can pick up the same day and it's going to cost like a couple dollars. It's like it has to go to the insurance company. They have to look it over. They have to decide whether they're going to pay for it. It can take weeks to get it approved. So, and you have to also like give them all the right information. And sometimes they don't tell you what that information is. So it's and that's for every single script. And so if you think about at least half somebody's panel is probably overweight or obese in America, where, at least 70% of the population is overweight or obese. So if at least half your panel could qualify, that's an incredible administrative burden, not to mention that obesity medicine as a field is growing so fast, which is terrific, but it's also a lot to keep track of. And so I completely understand why primary care doctors, even though they really want to, might just feel completely overwhelmed and sort of like, oh my gosh, this is like one more thing that I have to do now. So I think, if you do work in primary care and you don't feel like this is something that you have the capacity to take care of, I think it's like anything else in primary care. Like if this isn't something you are going to manage directly, you just have to have a good path for people to refer to, which I think is also very reasonable. That's why obesity medicine specialists exist.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of insurance really not covering these meds, the majority of us aren't covered for one reason or another. My option happened to be compounding, which I happened to do a lot of homework on before I decided which compounding pharmacy to use and telehealth to use. What are your feelings about compounding? Now, I would much rather take name brand. There's no doubt about it. If it wasn't within $50 to $100 of what compounding was, it's just cost is definitely a problem.
Right. And I think it's gotten even worse this year, because this is really the year that most, I can't speak for everybody's state, but most insurance companies, at least in Massachusetts, were just saying, you know what, we are not going to cover this for weight. So I have a lot of patients that are now really in a tough situation. So I definitely understand why people would go the compounded route. From a patient standpoint, you're just trying to help yourself, right? I don't prescribe it. For me, I just have a lot of discomfort in terms of safety, right? Because compounded could mean so many things, right? It could be from a very reputable place, or it could be somebody's just making it in their, basement lab, right? So there's a whole spectrum of what you could be getting, and not just the safety, but the efficacy, right? Like if we're adding things, I think this is the whole gray area now, where if you add something to it, you kind of get around the laws about the compounding, like kind of mass producing a medication that's commercially available. So I understand why patients do it. I don't recommend it for people, because I can't really do that. And just from the legacy of compounding issues that have happened in the past, like there's some very serious incidents that have occurred. So but I know why people do it. And I would say, I think we're getting to the point now where the prices, I always wonder, because I do have patients that will see me, they've been on a compounded medication, and then they'll come see me to transition their care. And I'm always asking, like what is the price difference? Because I think we're getting closer and closer now to it not being quite as wide a gap. And sometimes people are also paying like out-of-pocket visit fees, and it depends on what program they're using. But I think the cost gap might be closing in terms of the prices from Lilly Direct and NovoCare. So hopefully that will help everybody get safer, more evidence-based solutions. But again, I mean, I completely understand why people would go the compounded way.
Now, as I'm sure you know, the Wegovy pill just came out a few weeks ago, and a lot of insurance companies this quickly are already trying to steer people towards them because the cost is less.
Right.
And a lot of people who are on Zepbound and doing really well, the insurance companies are trying to steer them to Wegovy because it costs less. What is your opinion on this, and do you think this is ever going to change?
Oh gosh. Well, I think it's always changing. That's nice. The nice thing, and the exciting thing about obesity medicine is that it does always keep you on your toes. So yes, I can see why they would do that from a cost perspective. I never like it when somebody's care is really dictated by
Mhm,
insurance and not, what we have discussed as a doctor-patient relationship. That's always a difficult hurdle. Um, it's the first month that January was the first month that it was available in pharmacies. So I don't have a lot of real world feedback yet from people because everybody's been on the 1.5 dose.
mhm,
I definitely have had people that started it, and nobody's called me up and tell me that they hate it yet. So I think that's good.
mhm,
As of right now, just looking at the data, it's nothing, it looks similar to Wegovy in terms of the injectable Wegovy.
mhm,
Um, but I would never willingly switch somebody from Zepbound to Wegovy, the Wegovy pill, unless it had to be some sort of financial issue, because I think Zepbound is still gets people better results with less side effects. But of course, we're going to see the real world results in a couple months. I'm waiting until April when I think everybody goes from that, 9 milligram dose to 25. And I'm wondering
mhm.
if I can get a lot of calls around then. So.
Yeah. I know me personally, I looking forward to the orforglipron when it comes out because the eating restrictions are a little bit different, and I'm one of these. I just can't go without my coffee for that half hour. It's
I mean, that's a real thing, right? I mean, people and eh, it's finicky to take that pill. So yeah, we'll see. And it's going to impact
and,
how it works in real life.
and it's only like basically 25 milligrams is what they're suggesting as the dose, where the Wegovy injection top is I think what is it 1.4
2.4.
something like that 2.4. So that's a big difference, but it's your stomach acids that are eating away at it, and then it kind of makes you wonder how effective it's going to actually be.
Right. Right. Time will tell. So I think, yeah, but by this spring, I will have a much better sense of how everybody's handling
Yeah.
it.
Awesome, because for me on maintenance, that might be a perfect option. It's less expensive.
Mhm.
Don't have to worry about refrigeration. I could go to name brand. It's a
Travel.
lot of pluses. Travel, absolutely. And I apologize if I'm looking down because I have some notes here. Uh, but what scares you most today about how people are using the GLP-1 medications as to like using it for weight and so forth?
Yeah. Um, I think, one of the things that scares me is like what's going to happen with the next generation. Like, so we have all these parents that are on these medications. And so hopefully, people are learning how to not only just take the medications, but eat in a different way and really have a
Hmm.
different relationship with their food. And ideally, that healthier relationship of stopping when you're full, eating when you're hungry, like being a lot more mindful, thinking about the content of food, the quality of your food. Hopefully that will be passed down to the next generation. I think what I'm worried about is, are we just kind of setting ourselves up for this pattern where we're unhealthy, unhealthy, unhealthy until we hit a certain breaking point for the next generation, and then they start the medications, right? So I hope that it doesn't go that way. I hope that we're just, this is kind of an inflection point in American healthcare, in that where we're just kind of, we really can make a U-turn in
Hmm.
the obesity crisis, and we can really pass on lessons to the next generation, that and kind of get ourselves back on track. So that
Absolutely.
scares me. And then, the other thing is just about like people feeling very, I think because we talk about it so much, people may feel very casual about using it. You're like, oh, I can just go on this and it's not a big deal. And it's like, yeah, it is a big deal. It's always a big deal to take a medication like this. So I worry about that for people as well.
Similar subject. I know over time people's opinion of the GLP-1 medications as far as who should be using it. First they were saying, it's for diabetics. Then
Yeah,
when people started using it for weight, they're like, oh no, you're taking it away from
yeah.
diabetic patients. Then as supply grew, that wasn't the fear.
Mhm.
And now you seem to have people that are taking it for that 15 to 20 pound stubborn weight thing that just can't lose it any other way. People like Serena Williams, who is putting in the work
Right.
and probably eating a healthy diet. And I have subscribers who are basically doing it for that last 10, 15 pounds that they just can't seem to lose, and they really like the way they feel on it and want to continue, and it does have other benefits. So what is your opinion on them taking this medication?
Gosh, Lori, you have great questions. I I think for me, it always depends on. It's so individualized. It really depends on what's going on with the person, because I mean, I'm mostly prescribing this for people who have a BMI of 27 or above. There are the rare cases where maybe somebody has like a different sort of eating condition that would really be improved by taking this, like a compulsive overeating, or if somebody has like very clear medication induced weight gain. Sometimes I'm like, well, I just don't feel like waiting for them to like gain all the weight till they can fall into that category and then bring them back. It's so I will make exceptions in rare circumstances. I think it's really important to have a like with any off-label use, and just to
Hmm.
tell the patient, like, okay, well, this is a bit off the beaten path, literally. We don't have the research for this, so I just want you to, we can go this way. If it's something I feel comfortable, we can go this way, but just so you know, we don't have the body of research to kind of back up what we're doing.
Hmm.
But you do that in medicine a lot. We do that for many different things. But so I don't use it off label a lot, but I will. And it's, always people have to pay out of pocket for it, because insurance definitely isn't going to cover that. But I think
Hmm.
it can really be a helpful tool in these other sort of situations, where, maybe somebody, they had a baby and then they got started on something like Effexor, and then which is an SNRI, and then they gained, 20 pounds and they can't get it off. And there really are these medications that make it so difficult for people to lose weight. And so I think these are great tools to combat that in a way that you really can't get the same effects with lifestyle changes. Um,
Hmm.
but then if I definitely see people who, I can't find any medical reason, I can't find any medication reason. And then I think, I might be doing them a disservice by having them go on this medication, especially if I feel like there's a wide gap between, what they're doing and what they'd like to be doing, how they're eating now, how they're working out now, and the lifestyle changes they'd like to be making. Because I think we don't give ourselves enough credit in terms of how plastic our brains are, how much we can change, how much we can create these new identities. So I guess that was a long way of saying that it's um, I think it's, for me, it's very nuanced and it's very patient dependent.
Now, I was really surprised when I went to my cardiologist a few months ago, and he told me he was on Ozempic, and he doesn't have any weight to lose. And he basically said, I'm using it for the cardiovascular benefits.
Yeah,
So, I mean, people are using it off label.
absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. There's so many, and we're just finding out more and more things that it helps with. So for sure.
Absolutely. Now, who should not be taking a GLP-1 medication?
People who just want a quick start, who want a jump start, who want to,
That's my reason for starting. It just didn't work out that way.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it it does sound like too good to be true, right? It is one of these things that, like, I think if we told people about this 20 years, if we were like sending a message to the past, be like, guess what? Guess what we have now? We would never believe it. Would be like, absolutely not. There's no way that we've created this. But so but that part really is, in my experience, it is too good to be true. But also I think I just don't, I feel like we, in America, we have such a weird relationship with our weight. Like we're always like doing a cycle of something. We're never just like
Hmm.
in a good place. We've always got to be like, we're off and then we're on, and then we're always trying to fix something. And I like to just get people to the place where we're just living, right? If that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's not a dramatic part of their life, right? Um,
Yeah.
so people who want a quick start, people who don't really meet the BMI criteria, and who have talked to their doctor and they can't. There's no other reasons why they would benefit from this medication other than a 10 to 20 pound weight loss. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose 10 or 20 pounds. I think some people,
Hmm.
and I also think we make a lot of judgments about like what's the value in wanting to look good. Like people are just doing this to like for vanity's sake, but that's important. Like everybody wants to like show up as their best, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody wanting to lose like 10 or 20 pounds. Just like, is this the right way
Hmm.
for you? Is really going to depend on the person. So,
Hmm.
and then there's all sorts of medical conditions in terms of why wouldn't be a good fit for people. There's not a ton, but there are some really, there are a few that are, not a great fit for this medication.
Now, what do you think about people with EDs? I personally know one that told me she was on it, and I was really surprised. And she said it's just really easy to lie about it and get the medication.
Yeah,
There's got to be some sort of balance.
right. I think, for some people, it depends on the type of ED that is going on. For some people, it's actually incredibly beneficial. If people have more of a like compulsive overeating or that sort of excessive type of ED, it's a very useful tool. I think if people are really coming more from the restrictive standpoint, that's hard. And I think that is where it is beneficial having that doctor patient relationship where the patient. And even if I'm not somebody's primary care doctor, I'm their specialist, I can see their notes. I can
Hmm.
reach out to their primary care doctor. Like I can check in on those things if I'm worried. Whereas I do think that if it's a more informal relationship, or it's like very in more of like a text-based platform, that's pretty easy to get around if you're coming from a more restrictive standpoint. And yeah, I mean, a lot of these you're not going in person, so it's really you're trusting the patient, so that it does get a little dicey in that situation.
Now, similar type of subject is recently the makers of the GLP-1s are trying to get the red box label of possible suicide taken off of the
Mhm.
box. Uh, Now, I'm not a doctor, but I know it's does send signals to the brain. So how could you think it's not doing something to the brain? What is your opinion about them trying to get that taken off?
um I mean, to me, I mean, I can see why they would want to do that. I
Of
have
course.
had patients, like very rarely, that have said, wow, I do notice some mental health changes.
Hmm.
For me, it's been incredibly rare. I could probably count the number of patients on one hand, but it has significantly impacted their mental health. So nobody really like severely, that I could say was just related to the medication. But um, again, for me, it's just something that I just bring up with people every time we're talking about starting a medication. And I think even if they took it off, I'm still going to tell people that it's a risk.
Hmm.
So for me, it doesn't really matter so much one way or the other. But um, it's one of those rare side effects that it's important for people to know about.
Absolutely. Now, the GLP-1s have been around for 20 some years, but the GIP has only been around for about 4 years.
Right.
Is there any research on what that does to your brain or
Um,
long-term effects?
yeah, I think we're still learning, that seems to really augment what the GLP-1 is doing. And so really seems to kind of boost the activity of that. To my knowledge, I don't know if we have really good data that says how it's going to affect the brain. Um, I think there's so much that we're learning about this um, that we probably will have a lot more information in the coming years, and there's now so many different permutations of this that are coming out.
Hmm.
So as we have more and more medications to use, we'll have more and more data as well. So, but I haven't seen, again, I haven't had that many people that have had that struggle, so I haven't noticed a big difference between Wegovy and Zepbound in terms of that type of effect. But yeah, it's just something that everybody should be aware of and that should be mentioned before they start the medication.
Great. Now, I kind of have a list of some foods here that I want to kind of name off, and you could
Yeah,
say, yes, they're good, no, they're not, or sometimes they are, and
yeah.
maybe a brief explanation. So, protein shakes and protein bars.
Oh gosh. I am such a whole foods kind of person, advocate, but I do think there is a place for protein shakes and protein bars. And I think that place is if your appetite is really suppressed, especially when people first start the medication, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't eat anything at all. Then I get more nauseous and I just feel they get into the cycle of feeling terrible. And the goal is not for people to become malnourished on the medication. So I think those can definitely help people when they have those rough days or that rough starting period. I think there's a time and a place for it, but I like to use it very limited capacity.
Deli meats.
Oh no, 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 no. uh,
Butter.
butter.
Mhm.
Oh yes, but yes for butter because as always, I think we're so sensitive to fat as humans. We
Mhm.
are incredibly, even if we don't fully acknowledge, like realize it, like our bodies are so in tune to the fat content. And I think, as with anything, it's everything in moderation. So I would
Mhm.
much rather have somebody like have some vegetables with a little bit of like real butter than some sort of chemical concoction that is who knows what's in it. And that isn't like very satisfying. So
Okay.
yeah.
How about these little egg bites that are appearing everywhere from Starbucks to your local grocery store?
Um, I don't know. Like, what's wrong with eggs? Like, why can't we, why do we have to do the egg bites? Again, like, you sure for like a one-off, but I think
Hmm.
I always try to move people away from like convenience, this like mode of like convenience eating or like productivity eating, right? Because there's healthy options that also don't take a lot of time. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
here's one that people seem to not be able to give up, and that's bacon.
Oh, well, I mean, bacon does, it's like fat, salt, sweet. It just hits all the key elements. I would never, gosh, well, I really don't like deli meat because it does have a lot of nasty stuff in it. So but I'm not the food police. I'm never the food police.
Hmm.
So, but I don't, again, I think with bacon, it's like, how often are you having the bacon? Or how much of the bacon are you having? If you're treating the bacon like a seasoning and you're having it with something,
Hmm.
I mean, of course, bacon is delicious.
Now, what about all these protein coffees or profis that are, at our Dunkin' Donuts, people are making at home, Starbucks.
Yeah. Why do people need to ruin coffee? Like why? Like coffee's such a beautiful thing. Like why do we need to make these like protein slurries, or like the collagen in the coffee. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? Let's just drink your coffee.
What about like smoothies from a smoothie shop?
Um, I don't like smoothies. Again, I'm not the food police. I'm never the food
Hmm.
police, but I'm just giving you like my opinion.
Right.
I don't like them because they really separate like fruit comes as a very good nutritional package with water and, the fruit sugars and fiber. And that's how we evolved to digest it. And when we put it in a blender, we're separating all those elements, really like mincing up the fiber. And so it's not going to send, when we drink our meals, our body doesn't quite sense the fullness in the same way, right? And if you take all the fiber out, it's really going to disrupt how you process that level of fullness. And so I think every once in a while, smoothie's great, but I love it when people don't drink their meals.
About keto bread.
Um, what is, I don't even know what keto bread is. Like what is in that?
A lot of fiber so that it takes away from the carb content.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I guess it would depend on what it is. I'm not a huge fan of sciencey foods. I'm like,
Okay.
I think there's a way to eat bread and be healthy. Many people around the world do that. So, and I think we don't really know what real bread tastes like here in America. And that makes me so sad.
Yeah. What about fiber gummies?
No, I mean, that just seems a little too good to be true. I just feel like let's just eat the fiber. Let's have a salad, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I get it the old-fashioned way.
Now, I know a lot of people in the grocery store will go, "Oh, let's get the rotisserie chicken here because it's healthy." Is it really healthy?
Well, I mean, it depends, like probably depends on like where you're getting it, what kind of a chicken it is. I think, was it sustainably farmed? There's chicken quality is so there's such a spectrum. But
Hmm.
let's say we're on the high end of the spectrum. I think rotisserie chickens can be very helpful for people.
Hmm.
Kind of a helpful shortcut. So I mean, I try to help people balance meat. I'm not like a carnivore diet proponent.
Hmm.
So I really want people to balance fruits and vegetables with their meat. But yeah, I think for a lot of people it can be a helpful shortcut.
I've only got a couple more. Cottage cheese.
Cottage cheese is such a throwback. I'm just so like I think it's so wild that it's so popular now. Um, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, don't eat it. And that's what I would say. But I
Okay.
don't think it's like
Uh,
a
how,
must.
how about these meal prepare meals like Factor, Cook Unity, Fresh, those type of things? How about those meals?
Um, I think again, those are probably on a spectrum in terms of like how much chemicals and preservatives are in them, and I think for some people they're probably really helpful. Um, I think we're pretty. A lot of people are pretty separated from cooking, and I would like people to get more in touch with like. I mean, it doesn't actually have to take a long time to make a meal.
Hmm.
You don't have to cook every day. Like, there's a lot of ways to simplify your life and eat in a way that you like that also supports your health. But I think for some people, those might be nice. I don't like, I also want people to like eat based on their fullness and not based on the container. So sometimes I worry if people get these prepackaged meals, are they just like, well, this is what I can eat, versus stopping when they're full.
How about frozen vegetables?
Yeah, better than no vegetables. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do people tend to undereat on these medications?
Um, No, that hasn't really been my experience. I think in the beginning, that's certainly more of a concern when people are in that first month or two, in terms of they're just a lot of people just really don't have an appetite, and so sometimes I find we have to be a bit more prescriptive in terms of like, let's just even though my cardinal rule is always like, eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. But there are exceptions in terms of like, if you have no appetite, you need to eat. So you just have to kind of go through the motions a little bit for each meal until your appetite gets a little bit normal. But no, that is not typically something that I've seen.
What about muscle loss? Do people like not realize how much muscle loss can happen? And it's not necessarily the GLP-1, it's all weight loss.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. Any sort of weight loss, there's going to be fat loss and non-fat mass lost. But I do think the muscle mass is a little misunderstood, because actually most of the research that we have is only using measurements that look at fat versus non-fat weight loss versus something that can get, so you're not actually able to tell, did they lose muscle or did they not lose muscle. You're just able to tell, okay, what they also lost this percentage that was just not fat. And so it could be fluid, it could be other types of tissue, it could be skeletal muscle. So I think that gets a little blown out of proportion. I think there's also something to be said for muscle quality. Like even if you did lose some muscle mass, there's other things that are probably more important in terms of like your, functioning in terms of everyday life, how strong you feel. So I think muscle mass is probably blown out of proportion, but a lot of people don't do enough strength training. I think a lot of people focus on protein first, and I would rather have them focus on protein and strength training at the same time.
Absolutely. Now, what do you say to your patients that are on a plateau and have been there for several months? Do you have any tips or tricks or ways to get out of that plateau? Or
Yeah, well, for me, it's always a question of, is this an expected plateau, or is this less weight loss than we anticipate? So if someone's at a plateau, but and they're on like 15 milligrams of Zepbound and they've lost 22% of their body weight, I would say, well, probably not a plateau. It's just as far as we're going to get with this medication. And so we need to think of other things if we're looking for additional weight loss, versus if somebody has only lost 10% and we can't really, and then it's really a question of, okay, is there what else is going on? Are there medications that are interfering? Are there other medical issues that might be interfering? What's the gap between what you're doing now in terms of your habits and what you want to be doing in terms of your habits? So yeah, that's usually how I look at it.
now, quick question on food noise. I mean, this is a phrase I never even heard of until I was on a GLP-1. I didn't even know I had it till it was gone.
Yeah.
Is this, something that has gone on for a while? Have they just come up with this term since the GLP-1 medications, or is there any science behind it?
Yeah, I think nutritionists are, have been talking about this concept for a long time, but I think it's more kind of widespread, more general understanding now among people who are not in the healthcare field in terms of what can and can't, what's going on in the brain with foods. But so I think a lot of it also has to do with the types of food that people are eating, because there are definitely foods like there's different types of food noise. I think there's different origins of food noise, and then so I think that plays a big role in that. in that as well, because people can definitely get food noise if they're too restrictive. Like if you're, somebody who's been kind of in that diet mentality your whole life, and so you're used to like counting all these things and keeping track of everything. I think that's one sort of food noise, and this sort of perfectionist type. And then I think there's another sort of food noise. It's just like the siren call of the processed food. Like these are foods that are just going to hit our brain in a very different way than, we're really evolved to handle. So that is a really important aspect of food noise as well, in terms of looking at what people are eating. Because if somebody's eating a lot of processed foods or soda, things like
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm never surprised if they have food noise, because it's kind of what these foods are designed to do, is get you to crave them more.
Now, you have skinny people, and then you have, you know, overweight and obese people. Is there a difference in their, thoughts in their mind, or is this strictly like a disease type of thing? Is there a difference between the two,
In terms of food noise,
in terms of food noise and just biologically, with something that makes them, you know, not susceptible to gaining all the weight?
yeah, I think you can have food noise at any weight, and I think that's something that probably that's something that I know a lot of people who are at a normal BMI are still really
Hmm.
struggling with. So I think just because you look at somebody and they have a, I don't know, normal BMI, it doesn't
Hmm.
mean that they have a peaceful relationship with food. And we're not really taught to have a peaceful relationship with food in this, diet culture, or kind of hustle, grind it out, get healthy culture. It's like very two ends of the spectrum. And so I know you can have food noise at any weight. Um, I think, but I think it sometimes, it also depends on how people grew up. I think some people, they just never, if they grew up in a household where there were a lot of foods that would be more promoting of food noise, like you maybe never had the chance to not have that interfere um, with your diet, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's something that can affect everybody. And, we don't really get food noise from fruits and vegetables, unless we're being in that really restrictive kind of place. So I think I always love to help people kind of get in the middle of of those two spectrums, like the diet culture and the hustle, get healthy, track everything. I just think, I know there's a third way that is more pleasant. So.
Absolutely. Now, I know a lot of us, myself included, have been on several different fad diets, have lost all the weight, gained it back and then some, lost the weight, gained it back and then some. Has this ruined our metabolism? And can GLP-1s do the same type of thing?
Um, yeah, I mean, it can certainly have significant effects on somebody's metabolism, that kind of yo-yo dieting. Um, can I think that is where the GLP-1s, if we're thinking of them as forever medications, where they can really be a very useful tool in just kind of getting somebody out of that and helping them have sustained weight loss where you're not going up and down. And, there's always going to be a little bit of fluctuation at whatever weight somebody's at, but it really can just take people out of that cycle. Um, and also, I think a lot of people, when they are in that yo-yo dieting life, they just eventually find it really hard to commit to healthy lifestyle habits, because they're just feeling very hopeless. Like, I tried that, it didn't work, I don't want to do it again. And so I think when they can actually see this more controlled, sustained weight loss, they find it's easier to do these other health promoting things that, before might have seemed like, why bother, right? Like, why bother going to the gym? Why bother eating differently? Because it's just going to come back on, right?
I say the next generation of GLP-1 medications, is almost here. We're going to have retatrutide,
Yeah.
maritide. We have the oral medications. Is there any medication that you're particularly excited about that's coming out?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited about all of them. I think the more tools we have, the obviously the more options for people, and then the more, I think of it how I think of blood pressure medications, right? There's so many
Hmm.
options that I have if somebody to treat somebody's blood pressure, and there's always a way, if this one doesn't work, I can try this one, and maybe I combine it with this one and for this particular person, right? And so I think the more options we have will be so great. I think maritide is really interesting, that like once a month shot would be, that's great, but also if you have side effects, right, it's also going to be living with them for a lot longer. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. I think retatrutide is, we're encroaching upon, bariatric surgery results with these medications, and that is just kind of the next step bound, in terms of what a medication can do. So, and then, yeah, I'm excited about orforglipron. It's a different type of GLP-1
Hmm.
medication. So I'm hopeful that, side effects might be less. So I'm super excited. I think I just love this field of medicine because it's always changing.
Now, what do you tell somebody who's at their maximum dose, whether it's Wegovy or Zepbound, still has weight to go and
Yeah.
seems to be doing things right, but there is no higher dose to go? Is there, little tricks? Do you like, maybe fast for a day? I'm just making that one up.
Yeah.
But are there any little tricks that you tell these people so that do you lower the dose and raise it again? What is there for you to recommend?
Yeah. Well, I'm always thinking about like how much more weight do they want to lose? Because there are some people, especially if somebody has, BMI of 40 or above, sometimes, those are people that I feel like also, might want to have a conversation with the bariatric surgeon in terms of, how much more weight are we looking to lose for them to get them to the healthiest place. So, some people I'm thinking about that for them. Some I'm never changing if they're on the maximum dose
Hmm.
and they've kind of achieved what they've achieved and we feel good about that. I'm never like taking them off or restarting, or I'm not doing anything tricky. I'm really thinking about, you know, again, what's that lifestyle gap? Like how like are they a 10 out of 10 for everything? Do they feel like they're doing all the things? Um, and then I also like to think about, for people who aren't in that like category of maybe C bariatrics, uh, and because we want to get a substantially larger amount of weight off for their health, we might want to think about like, how do I always like to ask people, if you didn't know how much you weighed and you were never going to find out again, how do you feel about your body? Because sometimes if we take that number away, we're like, oh, actually, like I
Hmm.
feel great. I feel like my clothes fit really well. I have a lot of energy. Um, I really like, what my day is like. I really like what I'm eating. So for some people, it's really just about getting them out of that kind of the scale is the be all end all mindset and really looking at their life as a whole. And then there's some people that, it's like, well, maybe it's time to like go to the gym, like really look at the habits and are we doing everything that they want to be doing. And then you can also think about oral medications too. Like maybe if somebody is doing everything, but we still are looking for maybe a 5 to 10% more weight loss for their health, and they've done everything they can do, and the Zepbound or the Wegovy has done everything it's going to do, that's always a time to think about, okay, well, maybe we want to think about phentermine or phentermine topiramate or another sort of oral medication to complement that.
So why is it that some people seem to lose so quickly and some people are such turtles or don't even feel
Yeah.
anything till they're on the second highest dose or anything like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with medications that people are already on. So I just had a patient this past week who they were just so frustrated. They were on, I think, 7.5, and they lost, some weight, but not where kind of the extent that I would normally expect. But I just told them, like, I am not surprised by this at all, because they were on a high dose of gabapentin and a high dose of amitriptyline for other medical issues. And those can be very weight promoting medications, and so they can really slow somebody's progress. So it's not that they can't lose weight, and certainly these medications are like one of the only tools we have to help those people with weight loss if they have that weight promoting medication. But I'm never going to be shocked if that person, when they start their Zepbound, like, doesn't really lose weight. I'm like, we're going to see where you get to when you're on 15 and see what happens then. So yeah, so the medications that people are on, they're other medical issues. So people who have diabetes, traditionally, we're hoping, but we're not totally expecting that they're going to lose as much weight as somebody else. If somebody is still struggling with something like a compulsive overeating issue, that can really play a role. I do find, in my experience, it's been mostly women who are those super responders. And it really doesn't seem to, like, age doesn't seem to matter. I know there's some research that suggests like women on the younger end, but I have patients who, at many different decades they're just on that Zepbound 2.5 or the 5, and then they lost all the weight, and then that's it. But I recently had a couple men that's happened to too. So I don't want to say it's just women.
Now, if you could sit on a board, and for practical purposes, we'll say the FDA, and I'm not meaning to be political or anything, but you were on a board that was affecting how physicians were going to treat obesity.
Mm.
Is there any one thing that you would advocate for?
Gosh, how they treat obesity. Treat it like any other medical issue that has a variety of causes. And so I think I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think sometimes, like, patients can be very frustrated when they go to their doctor and their doctor says, well, you just need to eat less and exercise more. And I think we know now that, like, that's great, but also there's so many other reasons why people might have excess weight. And so I would just emphasize that it really needs to be treated like any other medical issue that has a variety of different causes. And then I would encourage all primary doctors to really get as comfortable treating obesity as they would with, blood pressure or diabetes or gout or all the other things that we deal with. But if that's not the case, or they don't have that capacity, to just always make sure that they have a very clear path for referral so that their patients can get help regardless of who's seeing them, and they don't have to kind of wander off into this like internet no man's land and get help from places that might not, be totally reputable. So
Now, with all these tools that we have of GLP-1 medications and new ones coming, do you have a prediction for, let's say, like 10 years from now? Because right now it's like, I think 70% of people in America are either overweight or obese.
mhm.
Do you have any predictions for about 10 years from now?
Oh my
Or do you
God.
think it'll take longer?
I think we will see I think we're starting to see now probably like a flattening of the obesity curve. And so in 10 years from now, I really hope that number is trending down. But I hope that also, I think I think these medications are great for so many reasons, but I also think it's great if people don't need to take them. So I really hope that this is more also incites like a cultural shift in terms of how we relate to our food. And that there's so many things that go into, you know, the American food culture. But I would love to see this be part of a more positive change in terms of healthy eating for people. But I don't know. I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I think we'll have a lot more things available. And who knows, like maybe in 10 years, we might have more of a protocol that's like, okay, you take this and then you get to your maintenance phase and then you switch over to this and you take this once a month for X amount. You know, we'll just have a lot more data, I think, in terms of what we do long term for people.
I heard in a lecture about obesity from an obesity specialist that said that, and I always thought that overeating causes obesity, and they said no, obesity causes overeating. Do you agree with that? Is there, truth to that?
Well, there's so many reasons for people to have weight issues. So there's genetic causes, which are real. So you could have a genetic component to obesity. You could have a social component to obesity. You can have the types of food. So in that case, like obesity causes overeating, or does overeating cause, like, depends on the type of food you're eating. It depends on the food you grew up with. Depends on your lifestyle. If you're just like, somebody who's totally relying on convenience food. So depends on your medical history, medications you're on. So it really is a very nuanced picture that I think we're as the medical community is now accepting more and more of, like, okay, there's a lot of reasons for this. It's not just eat less and exercise more. And so I couldn't say it's just one cause, but I think, a lot of times people do get into that habit of, for some people, it's just these food urges, right? And that can get worse for people. And then, the whole issue with emotional eating for people, right? If they're relying on food as sort of comfort in the same way that somebody might rely on alcohol, right? That's a sort of health spiral as well. So many different reasons why.
And this is kind of a two-part question as we start to wrap this up. There's a lot of studies being done on other uses for the medication, such as addiction, cardiovascular, MASH, dementia, Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Is there one that excites you the most? And the second part of this is, it looks like a lot of the newer medications that they're working on have a lot of studies towards this. Are they doing this so that insurance approves it? And they say, oh, it's really not a weight loss. It's really for MASH, but weight loss is a side effect.
Right, right. I'm really excited about the, treatment of addiction with these medications. I just have so many patients who, they go on these medications and maybe their alcohol intake was kind of in the problematic area, and it just kind of really solves a lot of that for them. They're like, yeah, I don't even really think about drinking anymore, or they have like 2 drinks a week, but it's not haunting them the way it was before. And so for me, like that, we don't have a lot of great medications. We have some to help with addiction, but I think that is really a wonderful sphere that could be so influenced by these medications. And then I don't know, I think it would be great if we had more indications for that, these more indications that they were approved for. I guess I'm a little pessimistic because with this last year, basically, where they said, nope, only diabetes for everybody on this insurance. And these major insurance, like the biggest ones in my state. I don't know if that will make such a difference in the future. You would hope that prevention would make sense to insurance companies. But also, not to play devil's advocate, but they are so expensive, and so many people could be on these medications. And it's not like an antibiotic that somebody's going to be on for 7 days. So from just a financial perspective, like, it is really a significant aspect of why they're not doing this. So, I mean, but of course it makes sense to kind of, you would hope that they would rather get people, healthier than
Mhm.
have them go into the hospital because of all their weight related medical issues and then have all
Absolutely.
the healthcare costs from those. But yeah.
I know for me, I was, family history of heart disease. I was kind of heading in the direction of eventually, like a lot of people in my family needed open heart surgery, which could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars versus the cost of the medicine. But, they're not looking long term, they're looking short term because I think that statistically it's somewhere around every few years a person changes their insurance, usually due to work.
Right.
So, they're not looking at the long term, they're looking at the short term. But what they don't realize is, somebody on Blue Cross, which they represent now, might go to United Healthcare, but that person from United Healthcare might go to Blue Cross in a
Mhm.
couple years, which would help
Right.
them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely caused a lot of turmoil in the already tumultuous insurance landscape. So it's like throwing gas on a fire. But I mean, I just thinking about your 10-year question also, I really am hoping that these medications are more affordable and accessible for people. So even if it's not covered, they have options that aren't, hundreds of dollars a month.
What could be done about the accessibility and cost? Because, I do realize Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk put a lot into R&D, but, you know, they're talking about billions and billions per quarter that they're profiting. I know all of it can't be,
Yeah, yeah. They, gosh, what I don't even know where to start with that. But they make these great medications. I'm I know that there's a lot of research that goes into it, and there's also, that all these profits are allocated in a variety of different ways, and some of it goes to funding, new developments, and some of it goes to who knows where. I am not, contrary to what some audience members might think on my channel, I take $0 from any from any pharma company. So I don't have like an inside baseball viewpoint on that. But yeah, I do really hope that market forces and, supply and number of options will really help ease the burden for people who are paying out of pocket.
Now, I tend to start wrapping these up, or actually wrap this up by saying, what would your best advice be to somebody who's considering taking a GLP-1 medication for weight loss?
My best advice would be, think of it as a tool that is one part of your health journey. So a tool that is not going to do everything, but is going to be one part that helps you get to the healthiest version of you, and a tool that you will likely need to be on for many, many, many years to come. And so not something to be taken casually or lightly, and also not something that is a quick fix.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I want to remind everybody that all of Dr. Megan's information is going to be linked in the description below. So please go over to her channel, like and support, because information like this is what's going to cause a real difference in the obesity crisis that we seem to be having. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Lori. This was so wonderful, and you had such fabulous questions. And it was so nice to
Thank
chat
you.
with you.